It's the haves and the have-nots today on Locked On Angels, and we're discussing what the Angels have versus what they don't have. And we'll take a look at the missing position pieces and compare their in-house options versus who's still out there and available. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And John and I thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen every day. Every show is free and available on all platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. We love 5 stars, please. And those watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed like our buddy Scott and click the bell to be notified every time a new episode drops. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On to get started.
Happy Friday to you, and thanks for being here for this edition of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Mike, we're still doing 3 episodes a week during the off season, but pretty soon we will be back to 5 days a week. It was
Almost
a nice little break, for us covering this team and putting out podcasts on the daily. We appreciate all of you who have stuck with us for the 3 days a week. But yes, we are almost there. Pitchers and catchers report soon. About the middle of February is when we'll pick it back up. 5 days a week. We've got a lot to talk about, including spring training, the WBC, lots of good stuff on the horizon. I'm excited for the season. I'm ready for some baseball.
Yeah, same here. I'm looking forward to just watching those spring training games with players that we may not even know, but it's baseball, right? The sound of the bat and the slap of the glove. I'm looking forward to that. And then after a first maybe 3 or 4 spring training games, I'm like, all right, can we just start the season now?
Let's move on. Let's fast forward.
The good news is that we don't have to wait this year because there is no delay. There is no lockout. That's going to be really, really exciting. And so first day, I think opening day is March 30th or something like that. And so that's going to be really exciting when that happens. And so I'm with you. I'm looking forward to that.
As we get into today's episode, we wanted to take a look at what the Angels might still be missing heading into the season in terms of the roster. There's a couple of pieces that a lot of fans feel like it would be really nice if they would go out and add somebody here or give us an answer about who's going to play there. And so, Mike, you and I are going to take some time to go through that today, and we're going to talk about that number 6 starter position. Yeah. We've covered this before. We've talked about the in-house options, but I wanted to talk about it in terms of who's still out there and could potentially fill this role. Should we go out and get somebody, or should we get somebody in-house and have them take over that number 6 spot? Let's take a look at the rotation here. We've got Shohei Ohtani, of course, Tyler Anderson, who just did a video with the Angels on YouTube. That was pretty cool.
That was great to get to know him a little bit, see his personality, and that's the stuff that I really love that the Angels do, like getting that out there and allowing us to get to know who this pitcher is. I think it makes it even better for us to root for him, right? Like
exactly.
He becomes endeared to our hearts, and he's going to be here for the next 3 years. And so we want to be able to celebrate this guy. I'm looking forward to seeing him pitch.
After him, we'll probably have Patrick Sandoval and then Reed Detmers. Jose Suarez slots in the number 5 spot. Number 6 is interesting because rather than have a spot where the 6th pitcher pitches every 6th game, they actually will get skipped over if there happens to be a day off. So that way they can give Shohei Ohtani a few more starts, Tyler Anderson a few more starts, and that way they kind of go through the rotation again rather than having a built-in day for number 6. However, it's probably likely that they will still need a number 6 starter. And here are the in-house options. Of course, we've got your favorite, and you have climbed aboard the Chase Silseth train. You're ready for him to take it over in 2023. Griffin Canning is also an option. And then, of course, on the depth chart on the Angels website, they have Tucker Davidson listed there. I don't feel like he'll be the option as a starter, at least full time. I'm sure he could make a spot start here and there. I'm interested to see what happens with him. Yeah. But it feels like Silseth is probably the most likely number 6 starter here, right?
Let me push back on that a little bit. Even though I'm on the Chase train, I wonder if Jaime Barria is going to be that guy. And the reason why I wonder that is because you just mentioned the sixth starter spot. That's fun to say, is not going to be available, at least to start the season. And they're going to move some pieces around so that Shohei and Tyler Anderson can get some more starts. And so I wonder if they're going to use Jaime Barria in that start, and then maybe perhaps use some of the long pieces in the bullpen. Perhaps that's where Tucker Davidson comes in, right?
Sure.
You go Jaime Barria, 3 innings, 4 innings, and then you have Tucker come in. I don't think that that's the best option, but I wonder if that is going to be something that they consider, because what we've learned from Perry this offseason is that he wants a major league roster. He doesn't want to rely on pieces that are questionable. And Chase Silseth, although a great rookie and had a really great minor league season and came up and looked pretty good, I think he still needs to cook, and I think he still needs to get some work in the minor leagues. Perhaps he's going to be in Double-A to be on a good team, or they might move him to Triple-A and really challenge him, because the offense is really strong in Triple-A, at least when you're pitching against those other teams. And so I would throw Jaime Barria into the mix, just simply because I don't think he has any more options, and he is going to be on this team this year. And I can't see him just being our long reliever. I can see him maybe spot starting and filling in. That feels like a Phil Nevin move to me.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting angle to approach that from. Now, listen, out there in the wild right now, the Wild West of free agency, somebody that I've been clamoring for, Michael Wacha, is still unsigned. Surprisingly, it's February now, and he has gone unclaimed. Word is that he's seeking a 2-year, $30 million deal, about $15 million a year. Some other names that are out there, Chad Kuhl, we've previously talked about him before. He's okay. Maybe as a number 6, he would be okay, but kind of a risky move. Another name that's out there, Chris Archer, but I think that his best days are certainly behind him.
Feels like
he was pretty impressive there for a while, but he just not a good option, I think. Now, if we were to pick someone out of the free agent pool, I think Michael Wacha is definitely the best option. And if you sign somebody like Wacha, it likely sees somebody like Jose Suarez move to number 6. And then you have a 1 through 5 with Wacha included. But let's talk about some of the pros and cons here. In terms of pros, he had a great year last year. And it was the best Michael Wacha's been since 2018. He pitched 1 year with the Red Sox, kind of a, hey, get me back to who I used to be kind of year. And he proved it. He really did. He had some injuries through there and didn't pitch for about a month, but when he came back, he did pretty well. But yeah, it's interesting. His last couple starts were okay. They weren't great, but it overall was a good year. What about some of the cons here, Mike? What do you think?
Yeah, the question really is it sustainable, John? And you actually ran through a few episodes ago some of the mid numbers, the mid statistics that really kind of show what he's able to do, like FIP and some of those things. And they were very much improved in 2022 over 2021. So those are really good numbers. I know that I'm a traditional guy, so are you. And so we'll look at like ERA and wins and strikeouts and some of those things.
Speak for yourself.
But the truth is that those numbers, the deep dive numbers, the fan graph numbers, right? Those numbers were really good and were a good indication that perhaps the Wacha that pitched last year could be the guy that if we sign him, could get this year. And I wonder if his price is dropping because nobody signed him and that this could be another show me year. I wonder if teams are really wanting him to perhaps do another year. I really think that a good option for him would be a 1 year with an option, like a mutual option for the next year. Or maybe you have incentives in his contract to get to this certain amount of innings pitched and maybe get to like, here's a performance level, all-star game, some of those things. And that enacts a next year contract. I don't know what the rules are specifically when it comes to signing players, but to me, that actually sounds like a great deal for Michael Wacha. And you're right. I wouldn't put him at the 6th spot. I would probably put him right behind Patrick Sandoval and have Detmers, even though I'm a fan, be the 5th starter, because I think you're really stretching out that starting rotation.
Yes.
And then Jose Suarez can come in and pitch. I wonder if the tension then might be like, well, what do you do with Suarez on the days that he is not pitching? Is he in the minor leagues? Is he in the major leagues? He has shown to be somebody who's really strong coming out of the bullpen. And yet he had a really strong end of the year as a starter. So I think with Suarez, he could still be that swing man. He's young enough to be that swing man. And then it keeps Jaime Barria in the bullpen full time.
I think the thing about Fangraphs and Wacha is that he outplayed those underlying numbers. So the stats and statistics and the analytics say that he should have been worse, but he actually played better than that. The results, the actual real results were better than that.
Yeah.
And so, but that is a question mark is, okay, does he live above those expectations again?
Yeah.
Or does he kind of play to the numbers that are expected of him? What about Chase Silseth? We talked a little bit about him. Pros and cons. I mean, he had that strong AA season, got some experience at the beginning of the season. And then, we would like to see what he could do in 2023. Like he's somebody that could be a rookie of the year. I think a lot of people are projecting that, but is it too soon? Does he need more time in the minors? You mentioned Perry Manassian wants some league ready talent. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I would love to see him up because I'm a fan, but I do think that he probably needs to cook a bit. This feels like a move maybe like June. Bring him up in June. Bring him up in July. Maybe he's a guy that can take a spot start in August and September. I think that this is one of those years where you don't have him start at the beginning. Unless he has a phenomenal spring training and looks fantastic, then I think you give him a run. And perhaps that's what the Angels are waiting for and why they haven't signed somebody. They want to see what Chase Silseth can do, or even a Griffin Canning, John. And I think with Griffin Canning, the question about him is really, can he stay healthy and can he bounce back? And is he got the energy for it? Because there's a lot of pros. I mean, he had an ERA plus of 114 in 2020, right? 8 out of his 13 starts in 2021 were 3 runs or less and 5+ innings. And so there's a lot of excitement around him. Where do you land when it comes to Griffin Canning?
I would like to see what he looks like out of spring training. It's hard because you know what you're going to get with him, but at the same time, he's coming off that injury. You don't know how he's worked. I mean, you and I don't know how he's done since working his way back. The Angels obviously know more than Mike. I really wish that we could get Michael Wacha. That's something that I've wanted since the beginning of the offseason. It would give me a lot more confidence going into 2023. I do like the 5 that we have, and if we end up with Canning in that number 6 spot to start the season, or maybe that Jaime Barria idea that you had where it's kind of a piggyback start. I mean, the Dodgers did that with Tyler Anderson. He was going to piggyback off of, was it Tony Gonsolin maybe? I'm trying to remember who they planned on putting Tyler Anderson in after, just to kind of stretch out a start. But if the Dodgers do it, it's certainly good enough for us. So maybe there is something to that idea that you had there. Coming up on Locked On Angels, are you a Rengifo at shortstop fan? Or how about David Fletcher? Is there someone else? Should we sign somebody out of free agency for shortstop? We're going to talk about that coming up on Locked On Angels.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and we're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they are the #1 sports book in America. They are FanDuel, and if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports so fun and so easy. And if you're a new customer, you can join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/locked on. FanDuel has all of your favorite bets from the money line to the point spread to the player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. It's all in the app that's safe and secure and super easy to use. So if you're a sports fan, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet and get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment with FanDuel count, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. And for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby. He is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. His show is free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
One of the things that we were hoping for with the Angels this offseason was that they would really add to the bullpen, John.
Mhm.
And you and I were walking through some of the bullpen pieces in an earlier episode, and then Austin Warren got DFA'd, and then they
Mhm.
brought him back, right? And
Woohoo!
I think that is an indication as to how valuable maybe this bullpen looks to the rest of the league, that we can have somebody go through waivers and nobody claims him, and then we can bring him back, right? And
Yeah.
so that's not a knock on Austin Warren. I really like him, but I think
Sure.
it is an indication that maybe there's some work to be done
Hmm.
in that bullpen. So why don't you talk us through who's in the bullpen as of right now?
Yeah, if we look at who the Angels have on the depth chart, they have Carlos Estevez, of course, he was signed in the offseason. Ryan Tepera is there. Jose Quijada, who's a lefty. Jimmy Herget's there, of course. Aaron Loop is also a lefty. Jaime Barria, Andrew Wantz, Zach Weiss, who actually had a great end of the season and
Yeah,
kind of a nice comeback in terms of coming back to the majors. And then Justin Garza was signed in the offseason. Kind of a depth move.
right.
He is on the depth chart, and it looks like the Angels have 9 bullpen arms. If somebody's gonna go from this pool of 9 players, I think it's Justin Garza, Mike.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
pitched in AAA all last season and was pretty good, but I would be concerned, especially with the fact that we could benefit from another lefty out of the pen,
right.
especially with the struggle that Loop had, and Quijada was hit and miss. I mean, once hitters kind of figured him out, he struggled a little bit.
Right.
I also think I know a lot of people feel like a lockdown closer would be essential to this bullpen. I'm really interested to see if Carlos Estevez
Yeah.
can step up and be that closer, and if not, I think they have some minor league options like Ben Joyce to come up and try him out and see what happens. But as far as lefties out of the pen with Jose Quijada and Aaron Loop, would you feel like one more would be a good addition to this bullpen?
I think that with the options we have, especially with Quijada, you want him in there for like maybe one inning, right? You don't want
Mhm.
him in there any longer than that. And
Right.
we saw when he lasted longer that people figured him out. It wasn't that his velocity went down or that he got rattled. People just figured him out. And so I
Mhm.
think he needs to come in for the 3 batter minimum, and then you yank him. And if you do, then you only have another lefty and Aaron Loop available. And so I would be intrigued by the Angels bringing in a free agent option. And somebody you've talked about often is Andrew Chafin. He is
Yes.
available, right? Zack Britton is out there. Matt Moore,
Mhm.
what is he, like 65 and he's still performing? I mean, Matt Moore is still out there and Will Smith is out there. So why don't you talk about your boy, Andrew Chafin?
Yeah, Chafin's 2022 was really impressive. He had a 2.4
Yeah.
WAR, 5-2 with a 1.95 ERA in 63 appearances. He had 5 saves randomly.
Yeah.
He had 74 innings pitched, 83 Ks, and a 1.176 WHIP. So a great season from Andrew Chafin.
Yeah. Zack Britton is another guy that's out there, but he is coming off an injury, and Johnny really struggled in 2022, and the
Yeah.
Yankees had to actually shut him down. I think that he probably wouldn't be an option for us unless we needed to just get somebody on the cheap and throw him in the bullpen, and maybe we get lucky. I just think that we got to stop making decisions to get lucky, right? And it doesn't
Right.
feel like
That's
Perry's
what this
making those
feels like.
decisions, right?
Yeah.
That's not a Perry's not Billy Epler, and,
Yeah.
and Billy Epler on the Mets is very different than Billy Epler with the Angels, right?
Sure.
Epler would go and get the guys that we could on the cheap, and maybe hope and pray and
Well,
and
it looks like
fast
the
that we could
Mets are
get-
interested in Britain too, so that
Yeah.
does feel like a Billy Epler move.
But the thing about the Mets, though, is they have a pretty solid bullpen. They have a
Yeah.
really great closer, right? So it would be one of those things where they can throw up a prayer and see what happens, but I don't think the Angels can afford that, which is why the name Matt Moore is actually really intriguing.
What a surprise, man. He's been
Yeah.
around forever, like you said, and was actually like a really highly touted prospect for the Rays back in the day, about 10,
Right.
12 years ago.
He was the number 1 draft pick, I believe, when he was drafted. I think he was number 1 by the Rays.
And he was, slated to be a starter, and then he had Tommy John, so that kind of messed
Yeah.
things up for him. But listen to this. Texas had him in the bullpen last season. Man, he was incredible. He
Right,
had
good numbers.
Yeah, some really great numbers. And so it's great to see Matt Moore and the success that he's had. I think that he could really be somebody who could the Angels could benefit from, especially the lefty out of the bullpen.
Yeah, his 2.4 WAR really stands out to me. I mean, he was really effective and powerful in that bullpen, and then his 1.1 WHIP. And I just love that he had 63 games and 74 innings pitched with 83 strikeouts. I think that those are numbers you're going to look for from a bullpen guy, right? You want to see how many games he's pitching and how many innings he goes. And then Will Smith is out there, John, and Will Smith is somebody who is intriguing, although his numbers compared to like a Matt Moore don't look as great. He had a negative 0.6 WAR. He was 0-3, 3.97 ERA. This feels like a bullpen piece that we already have. So
right.
if I'm looking at these names, I'm interested in Andrew Chafin, first of all, and then I'm also interested in Matt Moore. Those would be the two guys that I would pursue if I'm Perry Manassian, maybe to round out this bullpen. Where do you land with these four names? Is there a name that intrigues you over another name?
I'm actually interested in Matt Moore, considering what he was able to do. Okay, so I realized what I did. I accidentally put the same stats for Matt Moore and Andrew Chafin. So let me convince you about Matt Moore right now. And this is his 2022, a 0.3 WAR, 2-3, and a 2.83 ERA. So still pretty good. So Matt Moore has the numbers of 2.4 WAR, 5-2, and a 1.95 ERA. So out of these options, Matt Moore seems to be the best one to go with here. So my bad on putting the wrong stats there. So I'm glad I was able to correct myself in time. Mike, I think Andrew Chafin's a great option, but I'm surprised and kind of shocked that Matt Moore had such a great season. I'd roll with him. I think that would be a great pickup for the Angels. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that move as well. And quite honestly, I'm intrigued by Zach Weiss. I'm intrigued by Estevez in the bullpen. Those two names are really intriguing. And of course, I want to see what Jimmy Herget will do this season as well. I think those are three names I'm going to be paying attention to. I'm not going to be paying attention to Ryan Tepera and Aaron Loop unless they can prove that they're actually back to who they were. And if that's the case, then I think that we actually have a pretty strong bullpen heading into 2023.
So as we consider the haves and the have-nots, as you so eloquently put it earlier, let's take a look at who the Angels have for shortstop, but also who's out there, who's available, and should we consider them? So the depth chart for the Angels for shortstop on the website says David Fletcher, Luis Rengifo, Andrew Velasquez, and Livan Soto. Not a surprise there. Now, we have heard talks about Brandon Drury would like to compete for the spot out of spring training. That would be kind of interesting to see. And of course, you might see Urshela there from time to time. He seems to be more of a third and first base kind of guy. So the Angels have plenty of options, but none of these guys feel like a true shortstop, if that makes sense. But as far as the free agents that are left, Mike, it's two people we're all too familiar with. It's Jose Iglesias, who we did have in 2021, and of course, Elvis Andrus, who haunted us with the Rangers all those years. Then he was with Oakland. Then he got moved to Baltimore. I think he was DFA'd and Baltimore picked him up. He actually did pretty well with Baltimore. But let's talk about these guys because I think the free agent options are interesting, especially the seasons that they had in 2022. Now, for Jose Iglesias, offensively, this is not a surprise. He had a pretty good offensive year with us, but he bat .292. He had an on-base percentage of .328, a .380 slugging, and a .708 OPS. So a little bit under that 800 OPS that you would want. He had a 90 OPS plus, but here's the thing. He was really not great defensively for us in 2021. And that was kind of a surprise because his career in the past has been a lot better than how he performed for the Angels. But in 2022 with the Rockies, he had an ultimate zone rating, which kind of compiles all of those defensive metrics into one number per 150 games. If he were to play 150 games at shortstop and you kind of extrapolated his stats over the course of a season, he had 3.1. So a 3.1 UZR is a pretty good rating for him. Elvis Andrus, why don't you talk about him?
Yeah, Elvis is somebody who actually his offensive numbers, when you look at him in a a complete picture, he wasn't that bad last season. I mean, the home runs were there, 17 home runs, 249 batting average. He did have a 303 on base percentage. His slugging was 404. His OPS was 103, which is better than the league average. The ultimate zone rating for him in 150 games was 4.7. So that's better than Jose Iglesias. And if we had to go for a free agent, I think out of those two guys, I would choose Elvis Andrus. But John, I don't think that you want to box out somebody like Luis Rengifo, who I think we saw him kind of grow and blossom into a great player last year. And I know that there's some numbers and why don't you show those numbers in a second? But I know that there's some numbers that are questionable, but I think it's because this guy was still figuring it out. And maybe perhaps he's figured it out and has a year under his belt, and then he actually can perform for us. So why don't you share his numbers from last season?
Yeah, he had a 2.4 WAR, 17 home runs, which was good to see. 264 average. He had a 294 on base percentage, a 429 slugging, which is actually the highest out of the four options of Iglesias and Andrus and Fletcher, and then a 724 OPS and a 103 OPS plus, so 3% better than league average. Here's the hang up with Luis Rengifo. And
here's what hurts.
His ultimate zone rating per 150 games, negative 10.7.
Yeah.
And I hear what you're saying, though. Perhaps if he goes into the season knowing that he's going to be pairing with David Fletcher at shortstop, because he is a switch hitter, so he has that advantage too. Maybe the mindset changes if you know that's where you're going to be. He does play a much better second base. So if they really need to get him in there, I could see him playing second.
Yeah.
Fletcher at short, that sort of thing. But if you look at David Fletcher, who of course was injured most of last season, the 2022 numbers are not great, but you and I think that he's going to get back to those 2019, 2020 numbers.
Yeah.
Of course, did a whole episode on that. 255 average. Of course, these are never his strong suit. A 288 on base percentage, 333 slugging, 621 OPS. And last year he had an OPS plus of 77. We think he can be better than that. Yeah. But his UZR for 150 games extrapolates out to 10. So positive 10. So Giffey is negative 10 and David Fletcher is a positive 10. Mike, do you bring in a free agent to play that spot, or do you let David Fletcher, Luis Rengifo play those games? Maybe Andrew Velazquez comes in as a defensive replacement. Or even how about Livan Soto? Do you give him a chance off the bench, or does he start? What do you think?
I really like Livan Soto, but again, what Perry has shown us is I want a major league roster. And John, I don't think that you would keep Luis Rengifo off the field. I think he's your starting shortstop, and I think David Fletcher is his backup. And I think David Fletcher can then play second base or shortstop. Perhaps in the late innings when it's close, you bring in Fletch to play short because of his defense, and then you have Luis' offense for the first few innings. There's something about Luis that reminds me of Eric Ibar. Now, I don't want to compare,
say that.
Right? I don't want to compare him straight across, but when I looked at his stats versus Ibar's stats, hitting and also defensive wise, they kind of match up. And when Ibar first came up, he wasn't fantastic defensively. And that's the thing that fans forget about, because we have these highlights of him diving and then Howie Kendrick turning a double play, right?
Yeah.
But Ibar wasn't really fantastic defensively, but he worked it out and he became a really great shortstop for us. And there's something about Luis from the eye test and the feelings test, John, the heart of an Angel fan test that I go, I don't think you box this guy out. And I think you start Brandon Drury at second base and have his pop in the lineup. And then you also have a switch hitter in Rengifo. And then you've got a great defensive third baseman when Rendon is healthy. And so I think that left side of the field is strong. And I would just watch it if I'm Phil Nevin and see how he can perform. And if it ends up being a hindrance, then you've got Fletch on the bench that you can switch with him and have him play some defense. And if the offense is clicking, you can hide Fletch in this lineup, although I don't think he'd be hidden because he's somebody who will make a lot of contact.
Yeah, I think he's going to be much better this season. So we just wanted to give you guys the list of options of who's still out there, who's on the team that could play these positions. We want to know what you guys think. So let us know whether you're watching on YouTube in the comments, or perhaps get at us on Twitter and Instagram. Of course, we'd love to hear from you. Who would you roll with for shortstop, or a lefty out of the pen, or that number 6 spot in the rotation? Let us know.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today, and now make your second listen, the Locked On MLB Prospects Show with our friend Lindsey Crosby. He's talking about all those rookies that are marinating in the minor leagues for the Angels and across Major League Baseball, and his podcast is free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Get at us on Twitter at Locked On Angels, and of course on Twitter and Instagram at Super Halo Bros. We'd love to hear from you there. You're going to want to do that this weekend because Monday will be another Mailbag Monday where we get to hear from you. So you can send us a DM or send us a comment on Twitter. You check out the stories on Instagram, and we always have a question go up about Saturday, so you have time to respond before we record on Sunday. Mike, how else can they get to us for Mailbag Monday?
We would love to hear from you. You can give us a call like our friend Barbara in Florida did.
Barbara,
and
love
you
Barbara.
can give us a call at 714-409-6396. And you can give us your thoughts and opinions. You can tell us if you agree or disagree, and then we'll tell you why you're wrong. But give us a call. We would love to hear from you. and we can all have a great time on Monday on Locked On Angels.
Looking forward to that. We hope you all have a great weekend. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
And we will see you back here on Monday for more Locked On Angels. Take care.